Hello and welcome back to Shulchan HaRav. We continue in Hilchos Shema, and we are Baruch Hashem starting a new Siman Samech 65. Hanichnas l'beis haKnesses. If you get to Shul, umotz tzibur karin Shema, and the tzibur is already saying the Shema, or shehifsik b'shas hakriya, or if someone interrupted while reading the Shema, what are you supposed to do? Ubois gimel sifim. There are 3 sifim, and Aleph and Beis are quite long, so we'll probably just do one a day. Sif Aleph. Kar of Sirugin, if a person read this Shema out of order, or in, not necessarily out of order as much, but it's like skipping, meaning he didn't read it in one shot. Dahainu, shehiz chalikra, he started reading, the hifsik, and then he stopped reading. And he didn't continue reading, rather, bein b'shtika, bein b'dibur, whether he was silent, whether he started talking, and then he went back and finished it. Even if he stopped long enough that it would take to read the entire Shema, which whatever that is, a few minutes, even though he interrupted or whatever it is he did, and he waited that long, he's fulfilled the obligation. Even if the interruption was because of something out of his control, that even if he wanted to continue reading, he wouldn't have been able to, which we'll define here momentarily. The same halacha applies by reading the Megillah or blowing the shofar. If there was an interruption for these various reasons, whether they had to speak or he not speaking, but just sitting there, it's still, you just pick up where you left off. By davening Shmona Esrei, if a person stopped so long that it would take the same amount to complete the entire Shmona Esrei from start to finish, like whatever that is, 6 or 7 minutes, you have to start over from the very beginning. And then there are those that say, there's no difference between Kriya Shema and Tefillah, that there's no difference by Shema or davening, and nevertheless, if a person stopped because he couldn't continue, that even in a situation where he wanted to keep going, but he's not able to because of whatever this oinus is, then in those cases, that even by Shema, you would have to go back to the beginning, if you waited long enough to complete the entire thing. And not just from this part where you stopped and picked it back up and go from there to the end. No, you have to go back to the beginning. This is determined by the person's individual situation and not what the average or majority of people would be doing. Right? So whatever the situation is for that person at that moment, that's how the onus is judged. Even in the brachas before and after the Shema, if a person stopped in the middle of the bracha and he waited long enough that it would take to finish the entire bracha from the beginning to the end, you also have to go back to the beginning and say them from the beginning. But if the interruption was not due to something out of his control, meaning if he wanted to, he could have kept reading, and he willingly decided to stop reading and just sit there. And whether this was with speech or with just silence, even if it was a very long time, he does not have to go back. He just goes back. He just continues where he left off. And says the Alter Rebbe that is how one should go, lemaisa, practically speaking, because that is the ikar fundamental opinion. But this onus that we've been describing, some say I feel onus list him, even if a person's under siege by, he's being attacked by robbers, chas v'shalom. But onus achar, some other kind of onus of that category. If he's not able to read the Shema, even if he wanted to, even if he wanted to, he couldn't read it because of what's happening. That's what onus means here. Then there are those that say no. When is it considered a hefsik due to an onus, an interruption due to something against one's will? And when you have to actually go back to the beginning, it's only in either one of two cases, either because the person is no longer fit to read. For example, he began to read, everything was fine, and then he started having an accident. He started having urine leak onto his feet, onto his legs, or whatever it was, onto his
and now he's got to stop until this situation changes, until the urine stops. Or another possibility would be Shemaka and Eroi Lakriya. The place where he is no longer fit for reading. For example, Kagain Shekara Mahalach, he was starting to read it while he was traveling, he was walking outside. He came upon an area where dirty streets. I mean, like there's something in the street that smells. And now he has to stop reading. So that was because the area was not fit. So even if he waited a very long time, he only has to go back to the place where he interrupted. He doesn't have to go back to the very beginning in these einus situations. Well, in halacha, as far as the practical halacha, there are those that say Shabbat Tefillah by davening. I feel ba'inus acher, even an einus of any sort. You got to go back to the very beginning. Because there's an opinion that says even without any einus, even if you just stop willingly, you still have to go back to the beginning. By Shema, you don't have to go back and repeat the entire Shema. Unless the person becomes unfit to read, like the example we said, or the place became an area where you could no longer read. Okay, but if like as he said before, but if the place or the person they are able to read, and the place they're in they're able to read, this is for some other reason that stopped making him stop, then even if he stopped for a very long time, he just goes back to the place where he interrupted. I might have said that incorrectly prior, but that's the correction. That again, if you stopped because of an external factor of the person or the place, then you have to go back to the beginning. But if you stopped for some external factor that was not the person or the place, whatever reason he couldn't keep reading, then even if it was a very long time, he only goes back to the place where he left, where he stopped, and picks it up from there.